Welcome to class PM. The previous class we have studied the modes of reproduction and we have seen the various reproductive organs in case of male and female. We know that the sperm cells which are produced are considered to be the male gametes and the egg cells which are produced by the ovary are considered to be the female gametes. Now let us know in detail like how would these meet up and end up with the formation of a zygote, right? And this process of fusion of male and female is known as fertilization. That is what you are going to learn today. So fertilization is nothing but the fusion of male and female gametes resulting in formation of a single cell called zygote. Single cell called zygote is known as fertilization. So, as I've told you, this class we are going to learn about the fertilization process, right? We know that, as I've told you, though the sperm cells and egg cells are very small, though they are single celled, they have all the components of the cell. Like if you recall the components of the cell, that is cytoplasm, nucleus, right? Nuclear material. So, when you talk about this, during the process of fusion, we know that the male has a sex gamete called as testis, right? And what do testes produce? Yes, this testis produce sperms. We know that the sperm, we have seen the structure of the sperm. It has three distinct structures like head, middle piece and tail. So there is also a nucleus which is present, right? And this nucleus which is present will help in carrying the genetic information of the male parent. Okay, so the sperms which are present are released by the testis and the ovaries which are present, these are the female reproductive organs, right? So these ovaries have the release ova. So during the process of fertilization, as per the definition, the sperms which are produced by the male parent and the ova which are released by the female parent, they fuse together and result in the formation of a single cell called zygote. Okay, now let me show you. Say like this is the structure of your ova which has nucleus. See, as I've told you, please remember this ova is non-motile. It cannot move. Egg is always non-motile. Egg stays in its place. It will not go anywhere. But as the sperm has the tail, what does the sperm do? Slowly with the tail, it will try to enter. Okay, see, they have the nucleus and the egg cell has nucleus and the sperm cell has nucleus. So during the process of fertilization, the nucleus of the sperm cell and the nucleus of the egg cell, they unite to form a single cell. Say like this is the nucleus of the male parent, this is the nucleus of the female parent, where they unite to form a single cell. As I've told you, please remember the sperms which are motile, they enter the ovary where these eggs are present, right? And please remember, every sperm cannot get fertilized. Though millions of sperms are released at a time, only one sperm gets fertilized one time with one ova, right? So one of the sperm cell can unite with one of the egg cell, and once they unite, you see that they form a single nucleus. That means after they are united, they seem to be a single nucleus which carry half the characteristics, that is half the characteristics of male and half the characteristics of female. So that means, as I've told you, 23 chromosomes of male and 23 chromosomes from the female are united together during the process of fertilization, where you see that a single celled zygote is formed with 46 number of chromosomes. The nucleus which is present will have 46 number of chromosomes in case of the daughter cell which is being produced during the process of fertilization. This is how the process of fertilization takes place. So what happens during the process of fertilization? The male organ like testis which is present, it releases millions of sperms at a time. As sperms have a tail which is present behind, this will help in the locomotion of the sperm to move freely and they enter into the ovary. And it is not all the sperms get fertilized, only one of the sperm get fertilized with one egg and they form a single cell called zygote. So during the process of fertilization, half the characteristic features of the male and half the characteristic features of the female are transmitted to the daughter cell which is produced. That is nothing but zygote. That means 23 chromosomes from male and 23 chromosomes from female are transmitted to the zygote which has 46 chromosomes, or you can say that 23 pairs of chromosomes during the process of fertilization. So when we are talking about this fertilization, there are some interesting facts you need to know about fertilization. Right. So You might have seen various animals like which give directly birth like human beings. But there are also few animals, they don't directly give birth to the young ones. See, humans give directly birth to a young one, that is a baby. In the same way, cow directly gives birth to a young one, like say calf. But when you talk about hen, have you ever seen hen giving directly birth to a chick? No, it lays eggs and it tries to provide the warmth, that is incubation required, so that the chick can come out of the hen egg, right? So that is how you see that these are like, this is how they are reproduced, right? So when you're talking about this, there might be a question in your mind, like how come few organisms can directly give birth to the babies and how come few organisms cannot give birth, instead they lay eggs, right? So based on this, there are two different methods of fertilization, right? Like internal fertilization and external fertilization. So when we talk about internal fertilization, the name itself is indicating internal. That means the process, that means the fusion of male and female gametes takes place inside the body, like human beings, like animals, right? So such a type of fertilization where the fusion of sex gametes occurs inside the human body and results in the formation of a zygote is said to be internal fertilization. So internal fertilization means inside the body, right? That means the baby develops inside the body after fertilization. But in case of external fertilization, you might have seen some aquatic animals like frogs and toads. What do? Even mosquitoes, during rainy season, they lay eggs in the water, right? The female lays eggs in the water, whereas the male comes and releases its sperms onto the eggs, right? Where once the sperms are released from the male aquatic frog, that is male frog, there the fertilization takes place, where one of the sperm cell of the frog unites with one of the egg cell of the frog, and then they form into a new frog or a toad. The toad is the larval stage, right? So this is how actually most of the aquatic organisms reproduce. They lay eggs in the water, and where externally, that means outside the body, the process of fertilization is taking place outside the body. That is the reason this is called as external fertilization. And where you see that they lay some hundreds of eggs, whereas hen lays only 4 to 5 eggs at a stretch, but whereas frog lays hundreds of eggs, and this gelatinous kind of sperms of male are released, which act as a protective sheet over the surface of the eggs, and slowly they get induced into the egg cell, they fertilize and they reproduce offspring. So this type of reproduction, external fertilization, happens in case of all aquatic organisms. Though they lay millions of cells, say like hundreds and thousands of cells at a time, all the cells will not get fertilized. As I've told you, only one sperm can fertilize one time with one egg cell. And what happens? Now you might have question. So as I'm saying, only one sperm will fertilize, only one sperm will fertilize. What happens to those number of cells, those number of eggs which are laid? Right, this becomes the food or feed for many aquatic animals. See, there are many aquatic fish and aquatic animals which actually feed on these eggs which are laid by other animals. So that is the reason you see that the population is constrained, population is confined to particular number, right? You cannot say like millions of frog eggs can fertilize at a time, or thousands of frog eggs can fertilize at a time and develop into a new frog. That doesn't happen. Only 1 or 2 get fertilized, and the rest will be eaten up by the predators in the sea or oceans or ponds or lakes, whatever. So that means they become the food for the other organisms. So such a type of fertilization, where you say that internally means the fertilization happens inside the body of an organism, whereas in case of external fertilization, the fertilization happens outside the body of organism. So these are the two different methods of fertilization. So when we're talking about this fertilization, let us talk about fertility also, right? What do you mean by fertility? The fertility rate is nothing but you can say birth giving rate. So nowadays the most common problem every parent facing is the fertility problem. There are so many fertility centers being set up so that a childless can bear a baby, right? So like there are few parents or there are few women who are unable to bear babies, because what would be the reason? There are many women nowadays who come up with a complaint like they cannot bear baby because the sperm cells cannot enter the ovary. So what if the sperm cells are not entering into the ovary? Will they be like that without a child forever? No, nowadays the science has so improvised that you can have baby even though the sperm cannot enter into the human body, right? I'll tell you how it is. That is through IVF method, that is in vitro fertilization. What is this fertilization called? IVF. In vitro fertilization. And please note that this in vitro fertilization also is an external fertilization because it occurs outside the body. And now this IVF is the most common method of fertilization seen in many of the human beings, especially women. Now you might have a question in your mind, like our human fertilization comes under internal fertilization where the baby is developed inside the womb, right? Where the fertilization occurs inside the womb. Now how come we can say this IVF is external fertilization? I'll tell you, right? The doctors, what they do is they collect the freshly released egg and sperm. And what do? They make them fuse together and they preserve these zygote for few weeks under temperatures which are required, or the temperature which is present inside the womb of the mother, with all the nutrients which are required for the growth of the zygote. And once the zygote is formed, they induce the uterus of the mother, where the further growth of the fetus or the baby will take place as of a normal baby inside the uterus of a mother. Right? So such a way the baby which is born using this in vitro fertilization is said to be a test tube baby. Actually, this term test tube baby is misleading the people because the children are not born in the test tubes. Right? Only the cells are made to get fertilized, and once they are fertilized, they are induced into the uterus of the mother. So such babies who are born using this IVF method are called as test tube babies. As we have discussed, there is an external fertilization taking place in case of frogs also. In case of frogs, they lay eggs but they do not have hard shells. Only a jelly kind of substances which is present will hold the eggs together, where the sperms of the frog are released onto the eggs as discussed. Right? And then they fertilize and then form a zygote which will help in the development of a new frog. So such a fertilization. So this is all about your fertilization, where you can see that fusion of male and female ends up resulting in the formation of a single cell called as zygote. So this is all about fertilization.